Flatfoots and Fools, a podcast about detective games. I'm Andrew, and today I'm joined by my partner John. How are you doing today?
Hello. I'm doing good. Happy to get back in recording.
Yeah, we've had a little bit of a break for the holidays. It's been nice.
We have no idea when this is going to come out.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, we could theoretically move it up the pipeline if we want.
Oh, yeah. I'm just saying, while we're recording during the holidays, I hope all of you did have a good holiday, spend some time playing some games
Hang out with family, pet the cat,
or dog.
do all those things. I could be attacked by the cat while we're recording, so who knows? Alrighty. Today, we are here for the other pillar of the modern detective game renaissance, Lucas Pope's 2018 award winner, The Return of the Obra Dinn. So, this game, can you give us the one sentence, what is it?
So it's a 1980s style old school mystery about a Dutchman ship and trying to figure out what the hell happened to the whole crew.
Yeah. So before we get really into the depth of the game, give you a little background, because this game ends up being way more important than most people would have expected at the time.
When you say important, do you mean story wise or just in the genre?
Both. I would say it was an outsized hit, and then it also arguably is like one of the two founders of a subgenre. So, yeah, we've got the developer, Lucas Pope, who was a longtime developer in the industry, worked on the Uncharted series at Naughty Dog, and I forget what other titles, and then decided to go independent and made a little game that lots of people have heard of, Papers, Please. And that was a pretty big indie hit, a probable future episode. And after Papers, Please, he decided, well, I don't want to do anything like that. I want to do something completely different. So, unlike Sam Barlow making her story, this did not start out whatsoever to be a detective story or game. According to the interviews, thought process was, hey, I've never made a game with only two colors in one bit. I should try doing that. And then where would I make a game? Well, a ship seems like a fairly constrained space to tell a story in. I'll make a story on a ship. And that's quite literally how Obra Dinn was initially planned.
Oh.
Which is deeply ironic given the game's future influence, which we'll get to a little bit later. So, diving a bit more into the game, you play not exactly as a detective, but as an insurance adjuster. And you've set out to determine the fates of the 60 passengers and crew of the Obra Dinn, which left London sailing to Formosa and drifted back completely empty several years later.
Wait. You're a insurance adjuster for the Dutch East India Trading Company.
Oh, yes.
There are no good guys in this story.
Oh, yeah.
I always love seeing the East India Trading Company in any story because they're probably the most evil corporation in the history of the world.
I think it's pretty hard to argue against that.
They're even the bad guy in the Jack Sparrow series. I mean, it's
Pirates
great,
of the Caribbean.
but it does bring us a level of authenticity to the story.
And it does make sense that they would send out an insurance adjuster.
Oh, hell yeah.
So yeah, you've got two very important tools in this job. You've got the magic watch. And this watch, if you find any remains anywhere, you can point the watch at it and you hear about the last 5 seconds of audio of what happened to this person before they die. And then the instant they die is captured as like a still motion 3D scene that you can then walk around in and look at. And you get a bit of a radius around the person. Call it, 10 meters, 30 feet or so around them. And the idea is like, all right, you hear this audio, you see the snapshot, and it should give you a relative idea of how they died. You also then need to figure out who everyone is. And so the main part of it is you're trying to fill out everybody's fate. And you have a book that gives you a crew roster, some sketches without any names, and then it records all of these death scenes as you go. And so you need to fill out all of these fates.
One of the things I want to point out is that the watch is specifically called a memento mori. So that is Latin for remember death. You hear that a lot, and I usually hear it in like warrior culture stuff. It's like a token to remember death, remember life. So it keeps with the theme of the game. And it's like pretty much one of the first things you see in conjunction with death on the game. Spoiler, there's a lot of death.
Oh, yes.
It's not really a spoiler, but yeah.
Because just about everybody dies.
Yeah.
And so the big case itself, and This game, unlike some of the other ones we've covered, especially contrasting with, say, Case of the Golden Idol, this works as one single large case. It's not divided into sections that are a complete puzzle within themselves. And so it's just one giant list of all the people, and you can tackle any particular person you want at any time. It does have a nice little system of blurring out people's portraits until the game thinks you have enough evidence to tackle them. Obviously, you could theoretically figure out someone's fate before the game thinks you have enough to, but it's generally pretty rare to do so.
Yeah, pretty much it unblurs it and be like, yeah, come on, man. Come on. You got enough. It's okay.
Mhm. And each fate takes the form of a specific simple sentence. It is person was verbed, and then sometimes by a person or object. So not only do you have to figure out who the person is, you have to figure out who the person was who killed them.
Or whatever the fate was, yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it could be like, was crushed by crate or, killed. And there's some ambiguity. The game allows you to pick multiple different options that are correct. And then that all ties into the end as well. One of the nice things about this system is, at least in English, it doesn't ask you leading questions. It just shows you a portrait of a person. And you just have, person verbed by objects. And so you have to figure that out all yourself. It doesn't really prompt you in any way, which can be an issue in other places.
It's really bureaucratic in keeping with your insurance and just their vibes.
Yeah. And there's a ton of fun verb options in there. So, like, the first time you start scrolling through the verb list, your imagination is just going, what the hell happened on this ship?
I'm just imagining a form with checkboxes.
Oh, God, that would be so good.
Ugh. This is an age before spreadsheets.
Yes, though after double entry accounting, because that's like a 1600s invention, I think. Like, it's pretty early.
East India Trading Company, the first one with stocks.
Yeah, I'm reasonably certain the Dutch popularized that and what we would consider stocks.
Yes. Yes.
There were some other companies that had been doing something similar to stocks before that, but they widely get the credit as the first for having like all the different pieces. Now, lots of people will argue, well, actually, some of the Italians were doing that beforehand, and I'm not going to actually wade in on that debate because I don't know the issues.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a really cool thing this game does is, in order to prevent just brute forcing each person where you figured out who killed them, but you just try all the identities in a row, it only confirms a fate when you have 3 correct. So you have to be at least pretty sure of 2 fates before you can try to tinker with that. It's not a complete prevention. You can still monkey around with the system a little bit, but overall it works pretty well to discourage just trying to brute force everything. And it works really well here, and it's worked well enough that multiple other games have used a very similar system as well, directly inspired, as quoted from those games, from here. So the idea of batch confirming 3 identities is probably one of the biggest legacies this game created, and it works quite well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we'll talk about other games that use this system later, like Utter a Name.
Yeah, Utter a Name, The Root Trees Are Dead, A Case of Fraud all directly use this batch confirm. And then even Case of the Golden Idol, instead of going with a batch confirm, went with like the smaller boxes of identities.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, that game I brute forced a lot.
So this one, yeah, you're working on one big case. Initially, it seems quite overwhelming because when you start out, you've got 60 possible identities for each person. Usually you can tell how they were killed, and then 60 possible identities for the killer. But every time you can lock in a batch of 3, this starts to narrow down. You can also use process of elimination within specific groups. Like there's 3 midshipmen on the roster, and they've got a fairly distinctive uniform. So if you identify 2 of them, the third guy in that uniform kind of has to be the third midshipman. You can also base stuff on locations. Included is a map of the ship. And so you can sort of see who's hanging out in specific quarters, like the doctor's quarters.
Stewards' quarters and stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, if there's a certain person who's routinely in those, that's probably a doctor or the doctor's assistant. Additional note, most of the uniforms are period accurate. So if you happen to know what the second mate of an 1800 era sailing ship uniform looks like, you can be like, oh yeah, the dude wearing that, he's the second mate, and that's him. And that works for, I think, most of the upper officers and some of the mid officers as well. Some of the challenges this game has is the single case format itself. It can be hard to get traction with. Like when you first start out, you've got 60 fates. You don't really know who to go for. There's this giant expansive story that you're getting into. And I know for the first time for me, it took a while before I could really get a grip on it and start isolating identities. I don't know if did you find that to be the case?
It took a while before I started figuring out people's stuff. Like full detective mode was mostly just going through the story and finding out what messed up fate happened to all these guys.
Yeah. For me, there was a specific scene, which we'll get into in the spoiler zone, that really sort of allowed me to click over from bystander viewing everything
Yep.
mode to actually figuring stuff out.
Time to start doing my job.
Yep. And then, like, my wife had this problem. She played for an hour or two, and then we got busy, had to put it down for like 2 weeks. And then trying to come back to it was just
Oh,
overwhelming because
oh yeah.
you have to refresh pretty much the entire game. That can be a bit hard. And also, like, let's be honest, this game is pretty difficult.
Yeah.
It's very, very good still, but it is difficult. In some interviews later, Lucas Popa said if he had to do more work on it, he would have gone in and tried to add more parallel solution paths for some of the people so that in theory it would be a bit less difficult. But that didn't happen, and we have the game as is. He already spent 3.5 years working on this and
I
said something like he was going to go insane if he had to keep working on it. So,
mean, it's a crazy story.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it was originally expected to be a 6-month project and turned into a 42-month project. There's also a super cool video. It does sort of involve spoilers, so don't watch this until after you've played the game. But while doing development, he had a program that would sort of take time lapse snapshots of the work that he was doing over about 2 full years. And he posted a 2.5 hour video with his commentary on it showing him like making all of the models for the people and the ship and placing them. And it's quite cool after you've played the game because then it's this great behind the scenes look at how a bunch of stuff worked and little random issues he would discover along the way. So very cool. I highly recommend it after you've played the game.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. So this game has probably the biggest legacy. It's directly credited with inspiring the Golden Idol series. The root trees are dead. We mentioned the batch verify mode. Pretty much all of the modern detecting mechanic games draw inspiration from this and Her Story in some combination.
See why you pushed me to play this game much earlier than I would have.
Yeah, because it's one of the two founding pillars that a lot of other games are building off of. And I think without Lucas Pope's skill, A, at making a really good game in the first place, and his clout in the games industry generally, I
Mm.
think this detective game boom would have been slower or delayed because he was able to make a very good product and have the name recognition to get it out to a mass audience. And so a lot of people played this game in 2018, 2019, who, from a developer with frankly less name recognition, might not have happened.
I mean, on paper, this game was a tough sell, though. Like, I didn't know who he was. You're telling me to play a game with graphics that arguably are from the beginning ages of computers. It was kind of a tough sell. Like, I didn't realize it was by Lucas Pope, the creator of Papers, Please, until like today.
So that was a big thing at the time. It was sort of like the creator of Papers, Please's new game.
If you like Papers, Please, this is nothing like that, except for the fact that you're a bureaucrat again.
Yes, which was commented on by multiple interviews at the time.
Oh, I am not original.
But that was a big factor where he was able to get this in front of the games media in a way that an unknown developer probably wouldn't have been able to do. Like Zero Punctuation reviewed this, just as an example.
Oh no, I did see that he did a review, and he's usually real harsh on things, right?
Yeah, and generally liked it. Thought the music was a bit too loud at times and kind of blarpy, I think was the word, but definitely came out quite positive on it overall. And so like that kind of coverage was able to, get out to a much wider group. And there's a great pair of videos, which we probably mentioned before, the Game Maker's Toolkit detective games videos. And the first one was basically asking, where are the good detective games? And the video was made in 2017 when Obra Dinn had a demo available on Itch. And that video, after going through all the ways that most games aren't good at making you feel like a detective, it was sort of like the glimmer of hope. The light at the end of the tunnel was like showing off, hey, look, there's this thing called Obra Dinn coming up, and it looks really cool.
But the graphics are really old. You just gotta roll with it.
I mean, considering all the other stuff that video was covering, like old point and clicks from the
Oh
90s,
yeah,
like,
my first love. Yeah.
and even then starting to feel dated LA Noir. It's not sole credit for kickstarting the detective renaissance in games, but it's hard to over credit Obra Dinn given how vital and important it was. And not very many people have tried to recreate their own exact version of Obra Dinn, but just about everyone in the space has cited it as an inspiration and pulls bits and pieces of it depending on what they need. So before we dive into the fun part, the spoiler zone, we should talk about whether or not this is something we recommend for other people. So, what are your overall thoughts in terms of recommendations?
I would definitely recommend it the game if it's on sale. It doesn't have any replayability. You gotta kind of play it day after day to finish it. It's not something you can like put down and be like 2 weeks later be like, I can just jump back into it. No, it
Mhm.
requires a lot more brain horsepower and you got to be in a mood for it, but it's definitely worth playing. It is very convoluted story, but it is sufficiently different where I had a good time.
Yeah, I think if you take a look at the Steam page's little video and the screenshots, and if you think, okay, the graphics that works for me, because that's one of the biggest things. If the graphics don't work for you, the game is just not going to work. But if you think the graphics work from you after taking a little look at that, I absolutely recommend it. There's a reason people credit this game with starting a renaissance, and it still holds up just as well as at release so far.
Do you remember what color palette did you play it on?
I believe I played it on the defaults, once on the Steam Deck and once on the PC, like the black and white.
Yeah, same. I'm pretty sure I kept changing it to Macintosh. I tried playing as IBM Green because that was like the original kind of computers that I learned on as a kid. I was like, I can't do IBM Green the whole game, man. I cannot do this.
Yeah. So for the color options, he tried to recreate a bunch of the
Hmm.
early computers. So yeah, we recommend this. And so it is time to enter the spoiler zone. You have been warned. So saying this game has an insane plot just doesn't do justice to when the doom drops.
At first, I was like, it's like real drama filled. And then when it happened, I'm like, yo, is that a Kraken?
Yeah, I love that that drops what, like 5 minutes into the game ish.
You start with the first death you see is with a pistol to your face.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you get the final scenes, the mutinies, the guys trying to take down the captain. So you get like a clubbing, a stabbing, a pistol to the face.
The captain's the first person you're going to figure out correctly. And going over the game again really quickly today and thinking, at first I was like, the way that the story is structured is kind of weird. Then I realized that wait, no, you're trying to find people dead. So yeah, you're gonna go with the last person who died. That makes logical sense. As far as, having a murder watch in your hand.
Yeah, and then just that reveal of okay, you've got the captain, you can identify him pretty easy. You've got Abigail's body there.
Mm.
Activate her. You step out the door and go, "Why is there a crack in here?" And that's
Yes.
sort of the revelation that okay, this is going to be so much bigger than I would think.
Yeah, number one is not really grounded in reality, but let's fucking go.
Yeah. So this is a tragic tale of human hubris interacting with supernatural monsters of some kind.
Why do you say hubris as opposed to greed?
Yeah, greed is better. I was going to say human failings. And so you've got 56 crew members, 4 passengers, and they're headed off to Formosa.
Which is Taiwan.
Yeah, today's Taiwan. At the time, I forget who was in charge there.
It was a port.
So they're off, and the passengers from Formosa, at least one person I think is supposed to be royalty of some kind, and they've got this big ornate chest. And some of the crew on board start to think, there's probably some valuables in that chest. Maybe we should steal that.
Predictable.
And that's kind of what starts the chain of events. They try and steal this, they kill one of the guards, frame one of the other people.
Frame one of the other guards, yeah.
And that's one of the scenes that really unlocked my brain was the execution scene for the framed guard.
Well, the execution scene is the only real picture you have. The artist draws it. So like that scene's probably when you can finally start piecing everything together.
And a really big part of it is a lot of the crew stands in specific locations.
Hmm.
So, for example, the captain, I think first, second, third mates, and
Hmm.
then each of them has a steward.
Hmm.
And like in this scene, each steward stands next to their officer. And it's one of the first times in my brain that I was able to put together, oh, okay, each of these guys has a steward and each steward is standing next to their officer. Okay, that makes sense now.
After that murder is when I started really looking more at the uniforms. I knew the other uniforms were easy, like surgeon, the
Mhm.
butcher, the carpenter. For me, the gunners, because they're hats. I'm kind of familiar with naval stuff, but not ancient naval stuff, not 1800s.
I saw that hat. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it was going to be important and eventually figured out, yeah, it was the gunner. Like one of the little notes, I like that there's some ambiguity that's correct. For example, one of the guys, there's a cannon misfire. And so you can
Hmm.
say he was killed in an accident with the cannon, or you can say he was killed with the cannon by the Kraken, because technically the Kraken triggers the accident. And so there's different options that are all okay,
I wonder if does that change how much the family gets as a. No, wait, no, they just get paid their wages at the end.
unless they do a crime.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
So I would say that one would not. So once you get to the end and you have gotten everyone's fates, you then get to look back at your book and based on what events that person took part in, their family gets money or is docked money if the person did enough bad things. And so there's some cases where, like, for example, one man is attempting to shoot some monsters that are invading the ship. And in the process, he misses the monster, the bullet goes through a wall and kills someone else.
Oh yeah.
And so, depending on if you say that person was shot in an accident, that won't dock the shooter's wages. But if you say he was shot by this other person, which is like technically correct, then the shooter's wages will be docked for killing someone else.
And you are a bureaucrat.
Yes, you get to decide all of that. And then the more fates you have correct, the more stuff there is on the wall in the ending scene.
Oh, I didn't notice that. I'll have to really look at that.
I mean, it's not something you would really know the difference of
Mm.
because you don't see that ending scene very often.
Oh, that's true.
And especially if you're trying to get everything correct. And so on this ship, you've got a variety of different roles, a pretty good variety of ethnicities of people working,
You have a lot of ethnicities.
and you get to do a lot of racial and ethnic stereotyping because generally people of the same sort of job hang out together, and then people who are ethnically similar hang out together.
Languages help, yeah.
Yeah. So you can figure out, like, all right, well, there's two Russians and a Kazakh guy on board, and they tend to hang out together. And so if you can figure out one or two of them, you can use that to sort of get a good idea of who the third person is. A little brief overview of the plot. The second mate, I believe, was he the one in charge of it?
Second mate's charge of what?
Was he the one who sort of orchestrates the plot to
Oh
steal the
yeah.
chest?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's the head jerk that
Yeah.
starts everything. I believe he's the one that is like, yo, let's check out what's in the box. What's in the
Mhm.
box?
So they steal the box, kidnap the Formosan passengers, and take off in the ship's lifeboats to try and get to land because the ship is somewhere near land on its journey at this point. And while out in the lifeboats, they start getting attacked by what look like merfolk that fire spears at them.
They throw spears, yeah.
And one of the passengers is able to open the chest and take out what looks like a shell. And somehow this then stuns the merfolk.
Something with the box.
Yeah. So this is never explained particularly clearly, and that's fine. So they stun the merfolk. The second mate brings back a bunch of the bodies, the merfolk, and the chest, brings all this back to the ship. And so now on board the ship, they've got three of these merfolk as captives, and they're stored kind of down in the hold. And this leads to a rescue operation by spider crab men.
We get real Lovecraftian in this game. I did not expect that.
So a bunch of critters start attacking that look kind of like the giant spider crabs from Asia with sort of a person riding them.
So if you have arachnophobia, that needs that kind of a tag.
Yeah, and so this leads to very chaotic scenes of the crew attempting to fight these creatures off and people dying in a variety of ways. And this seems to work. Eventually they do fight these creatures off.
A lot of people die
Yep, quite a few people die. And then this leads to a bit of ambiguity because you can be spiked, stabbed, and speared.
and beheaded.
Right, but like those three in particular can be a bit
Oh, that's
ambiguous.
true. That's true. It's that's Being beheaded is not ambiguous. Like the guy's head's right there.
Yeah, that's very on brand. Or like fire as well.
Oh yeah.
And so yeah, these creatures try to get on board and rescue the aircraft. Doesn't end up working out. And then does the boat escape happen after this or after the Kraken?
After the Kraken.
Okay, yeah. So after the spider reinforcements don't work, the Kraken shows up and attacks the ship to rescue the merc.
They release the Kraken. I had to say it. I had to.
And it seems to work. The Kraken messes people up, and a lot of people die in a very crazy scene. And at the end of it, you're not really sure why. The scene just sort of ends. And then it moves on to the next scene where four people decide, okay, they've had enough of this shit. This voyage has been cursed. So they steal one of the lifeboats and leave the ship. And
I want to pause for a second about the Kraken though. I was just about to say, like, would it have been cool if it was an FMV? But then I was thinking the fact that it's static and you can walk around as if it's a still frame lends it a certain level of gravitas to see a shipmate being ripped in half by the tentacles. And I remember just looking at the character and just staring at me like, man, that sucks.
yeah, his original idea was to have it be a video of the death, but then realized you were going to have to watch it a lot.
Also, I feel like just the stillness of it lends to the theme of death, right? Like this is the
Mhm.
person's final moment in a snapshot in memory. And also, it's definitely is easier for a one person studio.
Oh, yeah. From a development perspective, the system was much more doable, and it distills everything into that moment, which thematically really works here.
Remember death.
Hmm. Yeah. So eventually, a group of people they jump in the lifeboat, they escape, they have to kill one or two people who are trying to stop them on the way out. And eventually, the captain just says, "All right, let them go, whatever." And by this time, they're down to what, like 10 people on the ship or something?
By the way, the people are leaving the ship because they're just done with this ship. They're just done with the crew. They're not leaving because they're running away from anything particular. They just kind
Yeah.
of said, fuck it, I'm done.
Yeah, so they leave, and then you get to the final scene, which is the mutiny, and the sort of the first scene that you see, where some people think that the captain has whatever this treasure was, and it ends with the captain killing all of the mutineers, and then
In self defense.
yes,
I would argue in self defense.
yeah, they were literally trying to kill him. So ends with that, and then he commits suicide. And so that's like the story of what happens. But you discover this story through jumping around in time, getting the different snippets. You do have to physically explore the ship in order to get to each person's death scene. Though generally, the ship starts very empty with only a couple of remains on board. But as you do these death scenes, if there's another body in the death scene, it allows you to sort of chain them together.
Bowl breaker.
And those remains often then sort of stay as a little ghostly image on the ship. So by the time you found all of the death scenes, there's a lot more ghostly remains on the ship than there were before. It took getting through most of the story to sort of get a broad overview of what happened. And
Right.
then I could start trying to solve fates in a big way.
Right. You need to have the puzzle pieces. Also, you have to just be shaken out of the story for a minute to be like, all right, it's time to do my damn job.
Mm-hmm. Like all that context really matters. And then once you've gone through the story, discovered most of the scenes, the book has some helpful tools for you. Like each scene, it sort of tells you, like it's divided into chapters, and each scene fits in one of those chapters. It'll tell you how many people die in that scene as well. So sometimes more than one person dies, and that can be really helpful. Then you can hunt that scene for more clues, like especially the Kraken chaos. Like a lot of people, I think, just get yeeted overboard, and you don't really know specifically what happened to them as much as like, okay, they were probably killed by the Kraken. But there were some absolute doozies. Like one guy seems to show up everywhere. One of the mutineers at the very end, I forget what his name is.
Mm.
Brennan, I think.
I just remember him as one of the executioners, right? He's one of the
Yes.
firing the rifle.
I think he's the one who fires the actual killing shot as well.
Mm.
Because if you try and sort of like line up the bullet angle, I think he's the only one who like shoots the body properly. And like that's an interesting moment where you can say that the person being executed was killed by Brennan, which is correct. You could also say he was killed by the captain on whose orders it was, which is also correct. The game does allow you to have a little bit of that ambiguity, which is quite cool. I really enjoyed, digging around on the scenes below deck and trying to figure out who's coming out of what room. Like say I had to figure out the carpenters.
Trying to find a picture of their uniform. Was that the reason why? Yeah, carpenters and made surgeon, and surgeons made cook, butcher. They all had. Most of them had aprons. which made it easier to figure out who was who.
Yeah, so there's multiple routes for many of the people.
People like their uniforms.
And this game does not have fast travel to a death scene, which some people want. This was a deliberate choice in that making you walk around the ship is supposed to instill more of a sense of place.
I agree with that. The fact that you can't fast forward things, skip things, it slows you down and makes more of a mood. And ever since we started doing this podcast, I started thinking about it more because it too often try to fast forward through things and skip through things. Like I watch my nephew play games and he'll just skip through tutorials and stuff like that. And this game in particular does require a lot of analytical thought. And you will definitely miss things if you could skip. An example would be figuring out the some of the seamen. As a Marine, I always laugh at that. Who you can figure out who they are based on their hammocks. And it took me a while to realize I'm like, oh, there's identifying marks on their hammocks. I believe it was numbers.
Yes, and those tie to the crew roster.
Right. And I was just like, oh, bingo. Does everything have a number? Spoiler, it does not. Life's not that easy.
Yep. And like that's where figuring out the Chinese top men comes in. Because there's four top men, one of whom is very easy to figure out. I think he's referenced by name. And the other three is like, okay, how do I figure this out? And the first time through, I did not find the solve path. So I would find two other people I was confident of and then just try one of those three. And that worked. Later, I found out the answer is that you have to do that. What you mentioned with the hammocks, because you can figure out, okay, they're all sleeping in this section. You can see their numbers on the hammocks, but they've got little covers on. So the only thing you can see is their feet. What I didn't pay attention to is that all their shoes are different. So you can then figure out which shoe ties to which name here, and then figure out later in another scene where they're upright, which shoe belongs to which face, and therefore tie the name to the face.
That is some real Sherlock Holmes shit.
Yeah, so this game is almost purely on the analytical and deduction side because all of the information is relatively easily accessible. Like, you don't have to put in a lot of work to get the information. Like, the scenes are there. You have to actually do the observation yourself, of course.
Yeah, it's not spoon fed to you.
Mhm. And it's not like some of the other games we bumped into where acquiring the information is part of the challenge itself. Whereas this is all there, but you have to do the noticing. And then, of course, you have to do all the analytics.
The only real thing that the game does kind of help you out on is where the next body is. Like it highlights it so you can see it even through walls and stuff. That was really helpful when anytime I put down the game and had to come back to it. How did you feel about the floating spirit thing that brings you to the next body?
I ended up liking that.
It took a lot of meandering paths and I'd follow it around. I'm like, man, you just made me loop through a circle.
Yeah. So sometimes it would take a bit of a long way there, but I think it was nice because some of those scenes can get really messy and confusing. And the way
Mm,
the ship is laid out, someone can be dead in a place that I would not have thought to look for quite some time.
fair.
And so I think that was one of those,
Oh, like the guy behind the wall,
yeah, a guy behind a wall or like around a corner, practically in a closet. And
crushed underneath a cannon.
like a very important thing the game does is around each death scene, you don't have the entire ship. It's only like a certain radius. And so you might not know that, well, there's a body just beyond this door that you actually can get to this time, but the previous death scene was a meter to the left. And so you couldn't before. And so you thought, well, I couldn't get through that door then. So having that little spirit to sort of highlight that there's another body, I think was good because otherwise you would have had to spend a lot of time combing through death scenes looking for the next body in a way that I'm not sure if it would have added anything
Mm,
because you already do need to spend a fair amount of time combing scenes to solve the identities, but there at least you've got a reasonably good idea what you're looking for or what could give you information.
a lot of running around.
And like it's fun because all the solve paths are in the game, but some of them are very well hidden or you forget about them. I've found this through playtesting that I have a tendency to not read smaller text on a page if I've already gotten what I think is the key piece of information out of it. And like the book has in the very, very beginning of it, like you check it out once when you first open it and you probably won't go back. But that's where you can figure out where the people on the boat escaped to.
Oh yeah. You have to look at the map. Yeah.
Well, you can look at the map and then it actually mentions like you're being sent this book from
Oh,
Algiers or something.
I just remember we were near Africa when they jump ship.
Yeah, they're off the coast of North Africa, but there's some ambiguity like that. Maybe they went to Portugal, maybe they went to the Azores.
Was it
Uh,
Morocco was one of the choices, I think.
yeah, and then when you actually get the book, it has a return address on it.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was in North Africa. I forget what the name of the city was, but you can then be like, oh wait, I know where that is, and then that's where they've escaped to. And it actually has a name there, and it's funny because when you first open the book, that name means nothing to you. But later you discover it's the name of one of the people who escaped on the boat. Yeah. And then once you figure out 58 of the fates, there's two that are locked. And so once you've finished the 58, you sort of wrap your case, you head back to shore. And then it's like 3 months later, you get another package in the mail where someone's like, great, you figured out 58. Here's the key you need to figure out the last two. And it allows you to open up, I think, two additional death scenes and sort of get a missing piece of the plot puzzle. You figure out why the Kraken left, and of course, how two people die.
That was the bargain, was it?
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing you get was the monkey paw, which I thought was very tickled by that.
Yeah.
Just as far as stories where the monkey paw is a cursed relic and like terrible things happen around it. It's like, yep, that's this game in a nutshell, man.
Mm-hmm. So many people die.
Well, not all of them, I guess.
I mean, 56, over 90%. Oof. Yeah, it's 93 and a third. So I think four people survive.
Your math is better than I am.
All that practice being a customer service at a grocery store.
Fair.
Yeah, turns out anyone can do mental math. You just need to practice it a lot and you will get good at it.
Percentages are important.
Mm-hmm. Percentages, like small weird additions or subtractions, at least in a vague sense. You'll always use the cash register to confirm it, but
Speaking of money in this game, the epilogue where people owe money, people get money, there's people's estates get money, and the game kind of brings you back to like, oh yeah, you're an insurance auditor.
mhm. I remember the first time reading through that and being like, "Whoa, this is weird," but it was also very cool because most games don't have that kind of epilogue. It's like, cool, you solve the case, woo, you move on. But this was like, oh no, the things that you said and did have real world ramifications.
Yeah. Was it like $50? Some people got bonuses for trying to save the other people.
Yeah, it was like you got your wages if you didn't do anything really bad. And then sometimes these merit awards.
To their families, yeah.
Sometimes your estate was like you could do enough bad stuff, like the second mate looking at you, to actually get racked into the negative.
Or the captain.
Oh, did he go negative?
He had his estate seized.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I didn't remember the captain specifically, which is weird because he's like the first person. I think
But
he.
also, I mean, like back then too, like what was it the mutant in HMS Bounty? Yeah, like don't lose your ship, man.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
The Bounty was a real story, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, captains had a huge amount of autonomy and responsibility in that era, given that, they were the representative of the overall group's authority.
I was very tickled about how much detail 1800s naval seamanship was in this game. I don't know enough about 1800s naval seamanship, but I do know a little bit about modern stuff. So it was cool. Oh, that's one thing. I don't think anybody has really thought about like how do you have food on a voyage that long? So like when you deal with the dead cow, like you kind of know in your back head, like they had to bring livestock, right? It's just not something you ever think about. And that was really cool to like have some sort of visualization.
Yeah, and that was very well done. Lucas Pope did a large amount of research on this type of ship. There's actually less crew on board than normal. This type of ship would normally have a complement of about 120 people.
I don't fucking know how they fit that many people, man. Granted, yes, I understand, but also I don't understand.
Mhm. And he did a bunch of research as well on model shipbuilding, like in a bottle. Because in a way, it's parallel to what he was doing. So he actually like got a bunch of these books on how to build these model ships in a bottle. And so a lot of the research he did was quite literally physical books there.
So I just looked up the HMS Bounty, and
Mhm.
that was about 220 tons with 44 officers and men. The Obra Dinn was, according to the stats, is rated for 800 tons. So,
Yep.
man, it's a lot bigger than I would have thought.
Could have gone up to 120 people. Basically said he burned out making people around 60 and decided, okay, I'll stop here. I've got all of the main things covered. And, I just won't go into the fact that there's more riggers and top men.
Could you just imagine if he had 100 be like, yep, 20 people got knocked into the sea by the Kraken. Just as these shirts are just checking off the ones like, killed by Kraken, killed by Kraken, killed by Kraken.
Oh, yep. I mean, it would also make our job so much harder too, because just
Yeah.
from a conceptual standpoint, it's a like what is it? Combinatorial explosion for every additional piece you add.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Because like the 61st fate adds like 61 times 61 more possibilities to the space,
Yeah, man.
which is like
Just
3,000 possibilities just for adding that one person. And so I definitely agree that, yeah, cutting it at 60 was probably a very
mhm.
reasonable and good call.
This ship was far more spacious with 60 people. Wow, that's looking at the bounty versus this. Fascinating.
And it's also kind of funny that we're like, oh, it's rated for like 800 tons. And then you compare that to a modern ship, and that's adorably teeny in terms of weight.
I mean, yeah, but they had to carry their own fuel. You had to carry enough food for a voyage to Formosa. Then what was it? Had to have been more than 2 months.
Yeah, it was probably like a 6-month voyage. They may have been able to stop along the way and pick up more supplies at various
Fair.
trading posts. Because, like, yeah, you're not going to have fresh food for 6 months. That's just not how that works. But
I was seeing the crates of lamb, cow. It makes sense that you have a butcher and a chef.
yeah, and you'd probably stop like once in West Africa, once around South Africa, the Cape, probably once as you're crossing the Indian Ocean somewhere, maybe on Ceylon, so Sri Lanka. You might stop near Singapore and then probably up to Formosa from there. So you would stop sometimes, but
Yeah.
it's still at least like a month, 2 months of food per leg. Plus some of the stuff like the salted bully beef or something, you'd pick up
Hmm.
most of it at the beginning, or hardtack. Before we get too deep into the naval stuff, is there anything else you want to cover in the spoiler zone?
I think I've said my piece on most of it.
Yeah, I think the same. I really like this game, and like I can see why it's led to where it has. And just any more thoughts on the game in general?
I thought this actually could be played on like a Kindle or like an e-reader, like e-ink display.
Oh yeah, you could do that.
Because you're only using one bit. So you could do that. And that might be a whole new genre and style for people. If you streamline the movement, you could probably do it.
Yeah, I never thought about that. Yeah, you could do something with the movement to make it work.
Choose your own adventure, or you just move it from chapter to chapter. You could turn this into a choose your own adventure picture book.
Yeah, I'd definitely do that. And like this one worked pretty well on the Steam Deck when I played it.
Yeah, I played on Steam Deck the last couple of days to refresh my memory since I originally played this like months and months ago.
It's got very good music as well.
I liked it.
Yeah, I listen to it sometimes. Like it's on Spotify, so I'll listen to the soundtrack at work sometimes. And it's got some fun stuff. Like there's a pub cover of the main theme.
Oh,
It sounds like it's being played on like a piano in a pub with the hubbub. Yeah, it's very good overall. So our final thoughts on Obra Dinn are, yeah, it's good stuff.
it's good stuff, but it's a lot. It's a
Hmm.
lot.
And that's one of the reasons that there aren't more just like it. Because let's be honest, it took 3.5 years of an incredibly like experienced and talented developer to make. It's not easy to do.
It's a big ask.
And while I would love to have Lucas Pope do another one like this, I get that, that's,
That's not how he rolls.
yeah, not on the cards. All right. So, in order to wind ourselves out, what have you been playing lately?
I've been trying to get ahead on our minimum of 2 detective games a month. So I just finished Detective Grimoire and Duck Detective 2, The Ghost of Glamping. So I did those two. And I needed a break, so I played Dispatch. And my God, that's a good game.
Yeah, my wife played through that one and it's been recommending it to me, and I swear I'll get to it. I just keep getting distracted with other stuff.
She just wants to know which one of the women you're going to pick. It's really what she wants to know.
I mean, not just that, but
Oh, and I'm back to Helldivers since the new patches popped out.
noise. Yeah, I've been trying to finish Scene Investigators, which I feel dirty every time I'm done with a case because it's a kind of a forensics game where you show up at a scene that's after something has happened. You've got a few questions to answer. So it'll be like, oh, who was present at 9 o'clock? Who killed whom? Stuff like that. And you've got to investigate this scene and figure it out based on the evidence remaining. And it's very difficult because you have to like scrub the scene in detail looking for stuff. And if you miss a piece of evidence, sometimes that's the piece you need to figure out what happened. And all of the scenes are very, I'm not sure exactly how to describe it as much as like It's a lot of sometimes decent people put in really bad situations and really shitty stuff is happening to them.
So life.
Yeah, and it can feel very just like afterwards, you feel kind of just like, ugh. It's not a feel-good game in the way that it makes you feel good, but I would say it's very good at what it's trying to do, which is give you the feeling of, solving a horrible crime after the fact.
Okay.
And we'll do an episode on it at some point because it was made by the same developers as the Paynes Creek killings.
Should I play that next?
Not necessarily. It's just one of those ones that I started it at one point and I realized I want to try and finish it, but we got plenty of other stuff to cover as well.
True story. I'm not gonna lie, I've been trying to knock out the ones that are listed as less than 4 hours. But during the Christmas New Year break, I will play and hopefully finish Disco Elysium. That is the goal.
Same. I've got winter break, disco it is.
Disco Inferno. I've tried playing the game twice already. It's just so much. And I'm so scared.
Hopefully taking an hour or two a day is a good way to get in there and get some done without it getting too weird.
If I play this, I'm going to plow right through it. So that's the hope. What's the time to beat for that? Like 20 hours?
Yeah, 20-ish hours.
Yeah.
It really depends like how fast of a reader you are and how into all of the details you get. Like you can do it a lot faster, but if you try to do every side quest, then it's going to be slower.
Yeah. So it's like 40 to 60. But everyone's pushing for it, so yeah.
We're going to do it, and we can address the shenanigans around the game in the studio when we cover that one as well.
Ooh, yes, I've heard about that one. About that.
And it's still ongoing. Like we don't know how that story ends.
Fair.
Because there's been basically several sets of claims by different people that are in opposition to each other, and they're currently being litigated. And theoretically, when that's done, the court process should bring out documents that confirm at least major parts of certain people's stories.
There are whole YouTube channels dedicated to this.
Yep. So we'll get to cover it then. All right. Well, you can find us on Blue Sky at Flatfoots and Fools, one word. We have a Discord now for the podcast. I should post an invite to that somewhere.
Yeah, we should. I think we're ready for it. Comments, criticisms, and suggestions.
Yes.
Unless it's about Disco Elysium, we will get to that. We know.
Work in progress. Fingers crossed. All right. The podcast is edited by Peter Crevier. Podcast art by Lolita Gross. And the music is by Antonic Music. Have a good night, everyone.
Keep on searching.